And here we are. It's the Hancock room, and setup is almost complete. There is the old apple tree as you walk in, and if you start to the right of the apple tree, you'll see the beginning of finding home. The quilt Two of Us that talks about our life, starting with meeting Paul in Guinea-Bissau in the upper left-hand corner, going all the way around until the boys look like they were in high school when this was made in 2014. Stone, Moss, and Snow, and the July Journal quilt is still at home, but it's up there. And then all of this is about my journey to find home and portray in cloth the things that are most important to me. From Listen to the Song in the Night when we were in Friday Harbor, and here we've got Moving to Maine, The Wall, From the Schooner Coast, and I moved into the family quilts. I always thought learning to do portraiture would be the hardest thing, so I started with that and figured everything else would be easier. This portrait of my son Joshua playing guitar is the first one where what was in my head actually turned out, and it really worked, and it's still one of my favorites. This quilt is of my son Eli. It's a composite. The picture of him running was taken at his favorite course at the middle school in Belfast, Maine, but I actually used a spot on the course at their home of Camden Hills School. His coach took one look at this when I posted it on Facebook and said, "I'd recognize that hair anywhere." Eli was an exceptional athlete, and so I was finally able to get a portrait of my husband, who is the notoriously grumpy man when you try to take his picture, at least. But he loves his sons and he loves wrestling, so he was an assistant coach for many years, and that's Eli pinning his opponent. Fortunately, that was a pretty frequent occurrence. I did a portrait called Clothed in Color because I wanted, when I made the portrait of Joshua, to do one in Technicolor, but I figured it was a little bit wicked to ask a teenage boy to deal with that. So this was a practice, and this is for an exhibit called The Space Between, where I was caught between the demands of caring for my mother and overseeing her care in her declining years with dementia, the boys, and everything else. So many of us have been in that position. Here is the beloved Pigwidgeon. This was made for Mary Kerr's book and exhibit, Dare to Dance, all about joy, and this is Mr. Wiggles Does the Circle Dance. I made 3 of these 4 portraits of the pets for Genome America to take to their corporate exhibit for all of the shop owners and sellers of Genome machines. The one in the top right is of Percy, and I just finished that. That is my newest art quilt, and so I'm quite thrilled with those portraits. My daughter-in-law, who was then my son's girlfriend, invited me to join her and others from the Mid-Coast on a bus that went down for the Women's March on Washington the day after the 45th president was inaugurated. The "When they go low, we go high" is a sign that I made that I had pinned to the back of my jacket. The signs are from photographs that I took on that day. I have the preamble to the Constitution and the First Amendment quilted into the sky, and those are the outlines of the hands of the people who were on our bus. This one is called Speak Up, Speak Out. Moving around, we move into the art quilts with one bed quilt for good measure. One year, I was fortunate to win a box of every fat quarter of Michael Miller's solids, Cotton Couture solids, and I ended up being a brand ambassador that year. And this is the quilt that lives on our bed, and I absolutely love it. Earth and Turquoise is from when I was inspired by a poem by N. Scott Momaday, a Kiowa poet. Peony from a quilt in my garden. And all of these things are about how I found my home here in Maine. On the top is The Wind Swirls the Winter In, and a picture of an apple tree and a stone wall. And the one below is called The Canticle of the Stars, and I've written a poem that is about these star trails that are created when people do stacked photography. I can go out on my driveway in summer and look up and see the Milky Way. Insalata is from memories of going home to California to visit my mother and a restaurant by that name that had Mediterranean cuisine. And I picked this subject matter because Eli's favorite salad is salad caprese. I started out with a ball of mozzarella as well as the avocado, but a big white ball didn't read very well in a quilt, so it turned into 2 avocados. Here I have pictures. This is 2 3D pieces. Aeolia is the mother of the 4 gods of the winds, and the piece on the table is called The Exquisite Sensitivity of Time. There are 365 1-inch strips of fabric, so 1 inch for each day. They are 12 inches for 12 hours plus 12 hours, and the colors go through the seasons here in Maine. I went to San Domenico School, which is one of the first places where I found a home for myself. And the quote on the outside is written by the director of religious studies, a Muslim at a Catholic school. And this is about life. You go through the seasons, you walk the path, the years go by, but every year you're in a slightly different place. And of course, at last, my favorite apple tree on our property, it fell down and almost died the year after I finished this. We had to cut off most of it because it was across the driveway, but the tree has fallen over sideways and it's still putting out new growth. So it's kind of amazing. So this is my exhibit called Finding Home at Maine Quilts 2024. Now it's time to go home and get ready for the show.